All right, everybody, it's 6 o'clock. I'm going to wait maybe 1 or 2 more minutes. I know that some people are probably still rushing home from work. So we'll wait just a couple of minutes and probably at 6:02, I'll come back on and give some information on this parent summit started. Okay, we'll go ahead and get started. My name is Caleb Starr, and welcome to the Broken Arrow Virtual Academy Parent Summit. The purpose of this meeting is twofold. One, I know we had a lot of people join us second semester, so we just want to provide you guys with an overview of all the services that Virtual Academy can provide for your student and all of the supports we have available. You may not be aware of everything we do, want to make sure that you are so that we can take good care of your student and make sure their academic needs are met. Second, we want to answer your questions. And so we're going to do that in two ways. One, we sent out a Google form asking for questions. And so we have incorporated the answers to those questions in the presentation that we're going to give tonight. Two, there will be a question and answer period at the end. To avoid confusion, we're going to ask that you type those questions into the chat box. We're also going to ask that you wait until the end of the presentation to start typing those questions in. We feel like most of the time when we do these things, we answer 90% of the questions you come into the meeting with throughout the course of the meeting, and that'll help us filter through the chat box more quickly and make sure that we answer all your questions. Just a couple of notes before we get started. Google form questions that we received, there were a couple of questions about Vanguard Academy and a couple of questions about Early College High. We want to let you know that they are hosting similar meetings. And so if you are really interested in those programs and that's why you joined us tonight, we would recommend, in order to save your time, that you just go to baschools.org, click on schools, find the one you're interested in, and right there on their page, they'll have information for you. And additionally, they will have information about when their meetings are. In addition, this meeting is being recorded and we will put this on our webpage. So if you have friends that maybe aren't able to get on, or maybe they thought they would and aren't able to, we'll have this information. We also know that there was an unavoidable conflict with a counseling meeting this evening. We want to apologize for that. If I could have stopped rolling power outages from happening, I promise I would have, but we just didn't want to have this meeting in a time when people weren't able to attend. So tried to find a better date. Turns out there are lots of things going on in Broken Arrow, and that's a great thing. So we just want to let you know about those details moving in. So I want to make a few introductions, and then I'll kind of go over the order of operations, and then we'll get started. With me tonight, I have the Virtual Academy administration team, and some of them serve a couple of roles in the district. And so I just want to each of them will be talking to you about a specific part of Broken Arrow Virtual Academy. So when it's their turn, they'll introduce themselves again and let you know which schools within Virtual Academy they assist. So if you're new to Virtual Academy and you're wondering, hey, if I need to talk to administrators, who do I talk to? You can always call our Broken Arrow Virtual Academy. I'm always there. But in addition, we have other people to support you, and we want you to know who those people are. So Kim Archer is currently an assistant principal at Creekwood Elementary and helps our virtual students. Stacy Gable is at Liberty Elementary, also helps with our elementary students. Robin Saputo is at Country Lane. She helps some of our elementary students and then also assists with a few of the middle school students as well. Julie Sunderland is an AP assistant principal at Sequoia Middle School and helps a lot with our secondary students, mostly 6th through 8th. And then Kim Fry is also with us, and she is the virtual school K through 8 um, elementary / middle school assistant principal. And so she really helps out a whole lot with the technical side of things at that level and is really a godsend to me, as they all are. So just to provide an overview of how things are going to work tonight, again, we will answer questions at the end. We ask that you use the chat box for that. It up to questions. When everyone's unmuted, everyone will cross-talk and it'll get a little confusing. So please feel free to chat box. Tonight, we're going to go over these things. One, software. Obviously, you're aware that we use software to help your kids learn. So we want to let you know exactly which programs are used at which level. Two, we want to go over the role of the roster teacher. We don't just want you to feel like, hey, here's some software and see you guys at the end of the semester. We have people that are designed and there to help you as much as possible, and we want to let you know how that works, how you can access those people. Three, we want to talk about the difference between pacing and grading. So pacing is kind of where you should be throughout the semester. Grading, obviously you're familiar with, but we'll give you a little more detailed information about that. And I know in our Google form questionnaire, most of the questions were about pacing. So we'll be answering those this evening. Or the role of the learning guide. If you have elementary and middle school students, sometimes they need some home support. And so we'll be talking about that role of the learning guide. And then last, we'll talk a little bit about the importance of having a daily schedule and having a dedicated workspace and why that's so critical, okay? So Star, welcome to the Broken Arrow Virtual Academy Parent Summit. We'll begin right now with Miss Archer, who is going to talk to you a little bit about the software that we use.
Hi, everyone. I'm Miss Archer. I help with Oakcrest, Creekwood, Timber Ridge, Arrowhead, Vandiver, Rhodes, and Linwood. So those are my elementary schools that I am currently assisting. So my job tonight is to talk to you about the software that we use. So our software programs are our main tool for the students to learn. We have some that are a little more independent and then others where we need a learning guide, which they'll talk about in a little bit. So our pre-K and kindergarten students use Waterford. Our kindergarten students are also on the Edmentum program. First through 8th grade use Edmentum as their main learning mode. And then we have, for our 3rd through 5th grade, we have Social Studies Weekly, because we found that that met our social studies standards. That was the best way for us to get that to them. Then for students 6th through 12th grade, if they are needing any classes that they take that are for high school credit, they are using Ingenuity and or courseware. So these are just the programs that we're using to have our students learn in the online platforms. And I'm going to now turn it over to Ms. Saputo for our roster teacher. Oh, I think I need to unmute Ms. Saputo. So let me find her.
Thanks.
There we go.
Yeah, thanks. I was trying. It wasn't working on my end.
Sorry, you were at the bottom of my list.
All right. Well, hi, everybody. I'm Robin Saputo. I'm the assistant principal at Country Lane Intermediate, and I help at Country Lane Intermediate for the virtual, and I help Country Lane Primary. And I was helping a little bit with Centennial, and my good friend Julie Sunderland has really held my hand because I'm not much that's not really my thing. I'm more of a little elementary, so she has taught me so much and I appreciate her a lot. So I am going to talk to you a little bit about the roster teacher and what that entails. So our roster teachers are kind of like the homeroom teachers, what we have in the brick and mortar, so to speak, and they are responsible for, they're your main point of contact for your students, and they also help. They have live chats with your students, and they're responsible for helping you work through the software programs. They're available throughout the day, and I know many of them have set up sessions as far as individual tutoring, which has been real helpful, and even small groups. And so that has been a wonderful um, attribute to all of our students. And also, they help with the grading portion and communicating important information that's going on with BAVA, and even with the brick and mortar, they will push out some of that. For example, picture days that have come up, it's pretty much the same, and STAR testing, it's also the same. So they'll set that up for your kiddos to either do it virtually or to come in and do STAR testing with our kids in person. So they're all pretty unique individuals, how they set up their websites, and they put their own little spin on certain things that they do, staying within the programs that we offer. But that's pretty much about your roster teachers. And now Ms. Sunderland is going to talk about your learning guide.
There we go. Hi guys, I am Julie Sunderland and I help out at the 5 middle school. So Ms. Saputo takes care of some of Centennial. We kind of team it and I help her as well. And then I do help out with Childers, Oliver, Oneida Ridge, and Sequoia virtual students, just making sure that all of their needs are being met. So tonight I'm talking a little bit about the learning guide portion of virtual school. And I think we've learned as we've done this that students really need a person there, in the classroom. It's that teacher who's right there to kind of hold their hand and hold them accountable. And while we do have a roster teacher for every single student, we found that they really need somebody in their home with them, kind of sitting beside them to help make it work and help them be as successful as possible. So that's exactly what the learning guide does. They help the student navigate through the program. There are some challenges that we've figured out ways to work through as you're navigating the platform. And the learning guide is the person who's right there to kind of help with that and just be the person who can contact the roster teacher if they need to and just really advocate for the students. Another thing that they can do is they can check over assignments before students submit them. And then there's a few different assignments in a couple of the platforms that are not necessarily to be submitted, but they're just for progress to help the student get better. They're almost like practice problems you would do at school or practice work you would do at school. I'm so sorry, my dog's barking. Things like that. And the learning guide is right there to check that and look over those things. And I am so sorry. There must be somebody driving by or a bird in my backyard. The learning guide can definitely help with that. And that's what they're designed to do. The program is designed to have somebody right there with the student. I am so sorry. I apologize, it's so distracting. Edmentum provides a spot for the learning guides, a manual for them to follow along and make sure that students are successful. I'm going to post that in the chat, the link for that. So I'll get that posted as soon as I'm finished talking. You do have to scroll down on the webpage and you'll see each grade level, but you can click on it and see what the learning guides are. And at this point, we are moving on to Ms. Fry to talk about pacing and grades. And now my dog will not bark. So
you're just keeping it real for us. Ms.
Yes.
Sutherland, keeping it real. Well, again, my name is Ms. Fry, and I'm here tonight. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about grades and pacing. And there is a definite difference in the two. And I think that's where some confusion comes in. So we have one unique advantage to the virtual program in that in any time you can log in to your child's account and see exactly what their grade is in any of their classes. So if you have a fifth grader and they have 6 classes in Edmentum, you can log in and see all 6 grades. I know in elementary school, that's kind of a luxury that you have from Virtual Academy. If they're 3rd grade and under, you're going to see that percentage grade, but I want you to keep in mind that if they were in person, you would get that rating of a 4, 3, 2, 1. So you're actually going to see a percentage grade. So you know exactly what their percentage of accomplishment is on any of those courses. And that can be done whether they're in Waterford, whether they're in Edmentum, whether they're in courseware. You can log in and see those different percentage grades. So feel free to log in and look at any of your children's grades at any time. There is no reason to reach out to the roster teacher for that. The only thing that might affect that slightly would be if you have some assignments that are waiting to be graded. But it's a much closer, I mean, you're going to get that answer much faster than you would perhaps with an in-person student. Now, pacing is very different, and I'm going to steal Mr. Starr's analogy because it's a really good one. So if I were running a marathon and I wanted to have a 10-minute mile, and I get to the end of that first mile and I've done 12 minutes instead of 10, then I know that I'm going to have to pick up the pace to make up those other 2 minutes. On the other hand, if I get to the 10-minute mile and I've the 10 minutes, but I've only taken 8 minutes to do that first mile, then I can slow down a little bit. I don't have to rush quite as much. That's what pacing really is. So if you log into your child's Adminim account and you go to their dashboard, you're going to see 2 boxes. One is their actual progress and one is their expected progress. So you may be thinking, wow, my kid is acing English language arts because they've got a 90%. I need you to look at that pacing score. That's that progress score. So is it, if there's 167 assignments in that ELA class and they've only completed 28 assignments, then 90% is really not an accurate level of where they're at if they're telling you that they should have completed 102 assignments by now. So that's what the pacing is all about. We want you to be aware of where your child should be in that pacing. So we're 2/3 through the school year now. We're 66% through on March 5th through the school year. So really your child should have completed about 63 to 68% of their coursework at this point of the school year. If they're behind that, then you're going to want to speed them up a little bit. If they're ahead of that or right in that zone, then they're doing great and they're going to be on track. And why is that important? Well, when they get to school next fall, depending on whether they stay virtual or depending on whether they go in person, they've only completed 20% of the pacing by the time we finish the school year, then they're going to be behind their classmates. They're not going to have that curriculum that they need, that 4th grade English language arts. They're going to have a big deficit. So we really want to fill those gaps. We really want them to get all of that curriculum in. It's a disadvantage. We want those children to be successful. We want them to finish the year strong, and we want them to feel good about where they are so that when they go to school in the fall, they feel like they're right there with their classmates. If you are confused about this, you still don't know quite how to look at those grades, there is in the December 7th newsletter, and we have those links as well, and I'll put them in the chat box. There are links to a Loom video that Mr. Starr very clearly shows you how to look this up. There's also a link to all the pacing guides for every grade level, every subject, so you can see exactly where your child should be. And your roster teacher is an excellent resource for this. I know that our roster teachers have reached out to many parents with information if they were concerned about where they were in the progress. And I also know that our roster teachers will be able to share any of the information that I've just suggested to you to look up as well. They'll be able to share those pacing guides with you. They'll be able to share that Loom video with you. So I just hope that that really helps you understand where the difference is in grades and in pacing, because they are very different. You have that 90% grade, but if you're only completed 20% of the work and you should be at that 100, that 66% of the work, then your child is behind. And that's why pacing is so important. Because come May, they really will have a hard time catching up if they're that far behind. So pacing is like a race, although they can walk through the race. And so I hope that clarifies that. Next, I'm going to turn it over to Miss Gable, excuse me. And Miss Gable is going to talk to you about the importance of a dedicated workspace, which also is why we want that pacing to be, if they're only working 30 minutes a day, they can't possibly get all of the work done that requires them to be on track for pacing.
Thank you, Mrs. Fry. Again, my name is Stacy Gable, and I am housed at Liberty. I also help with Aspen Creek, so the virtual programs at Aspen Creek, Highland Park, Leisure Park, of course, Liberty, Rosewood, Spring Creek. It's great to see some faces in person. We were really glad to have such a great turnout tonight. And I just want to take a few minutes to visit with you all about having a dedicated workspace and having a daily, what I'm going to call a routine. I think probably one of the favorite things about the virtual program is the flexibility. And we've just heard such great feedback that you can really do basically school on your own time. There are a little couple caveats to that. So I just want to remind you that one of the things that your children or child will need to be successful is to having a dedicated workspace, whether that is the kitchen table or the dining room or a desk that is their own, where distraction free, kind of a quiet space where they can focus and learn, and also a space where you as a learning guide can be there to help them when needed. We also want you to keep in mind too, surrounding and background noise. So not only for when they are on personally with their roster teacher for maybe a tutoring session or some check-ins, but just also really having distractions to a minimum. Things like, other kiddos in the background, TV, phone calls. So sometimes it's being creative with your routine and your times to make it work for your family. So you've heard me say that word routine. The great thing about being virtual is that you can really make your day how you want it to look like. In brick and mortar sites, we all start at the same time. Lunch is at a certain time, specials is at a certain time. You really get to make up your routine, but it's very critical that you stick to that routine. So if you're someone who's going to get up early and you and your child are going to get the day started, find that quiet space, find that dedicated workspace, and really stick to that routine. Mrs. Fry mentioned kind of the pacing guide and staying on track. Again, we want to run the marathon, kind of think, long term. So really thinking about how much work your child needs to do in a day to stay on pace. And then also just communicating with your roster teacher. So the flexibility of maybe there's vacations or different things that come up. But part of attendance for virtual is that your child is logging in and completing work and uploading work each day. So maintaining that daily routine also just helps with good study habits and good work habits. And it's really just overall best for student market. I'm now going to turn it back to Mr. Starr, who I believe is going to answer some questions.
All right, thanks everybody. I appreciate the information. I'm going to provide just a little recap. While I'm doing that, if you have questions, you can feel free to start putting those in the question box. I would remind you that if you have questions that are very specific in nature to your student, we probably won't address those in a public forum. We would just ask you to reach out to us or your roster teacher, and we would provide that information to you specifically. That way we can keep the privacy of you and your student, which is important to all of us, we know. So feel free to start in the chat box. Did just want to recap real quick. The software we use, we chose that based on the information we had at hand at the time. And each year we will review those software programs and the new options that may be available. And we're always trying to provide the best software we possibly can for your students. Your roster teacher, your point of contact, should get back to you within 24 hours and be able to help you set up meetings with them, Zoom with them in order to help your student. And if you don't yet know who your roster teacher is, please feel free to reach out to us. We'll put our email addresses in the chat box at the end of the evening so that you can have those, all right? We talked a little bit about the role of the learning guide. If you have an elementary student and even a middle school student, just having someone that can help them stay on that pace that Miss Fry talked about is important. So make sure that you have an adult or an older brother or sister that can remind them and encourage them just to keep up the good work. The difference between pacing and grading. It's really good that your kid has a 90%, but if they've only done 4 of 20 assignments, that's still a problem. So make sure that you're aware of the difference, that you know where to find those things in the software program. And again, if you need us to help you with that, we're here, and don't hesitate to reach out. And then last, of course, Ms. Gable talking about that dedicated workspace and daily schedule. Can't overemphasize how important it is for you to have those things for your kids. I have 3 kids of my own. One of mine decided to go virtual, and I didn't do that. And by day 3, I realized she was just chilling in her bed with her computer. And so we got her a little desk and we moved her downstairs, and we made sure that she had that dedicated workspace and that she knew the times that it was expected for her to be actively engaged in learning. And so with those things in place, she's done a whole lot better. So again, thank you to our assistant principals and administrators that have helped us with our presentation this evening. So I'm going to go ahead and scroll over to the chat box, and it'll take me a second to read the question, and you can scroll over to the chat box and see those questions as well. First one asks, is it possible for our roster teachers to adjust for second semester? Yes, absolutely. They're in the process of doing that. Some of the software, it's really easy for them to adjust for the second semester. If your kid came in at second semester, some of them, it takes a few more days. And especially since they have 6 courses each. So we will be adjusting those. And again, if your child specifically hasn't seen those adjustments, feel free to reach out to us, and we will be as helpful as possible as we can there.
Caleb, the next question is, in previous weekly updates, you've mentioned exciting new opportunities next year for grades 6 through 12 at BAVA. Do you have any announcements of what those are yet?
Well, we're talking specifically about the course guide opportunities or the elective opportunities that you have available to choose from. We're in pre-enrollment season right now. My newsletters the past few weeks have talked about pre-enrollment. And so when you get that pre-enrollment information specific to your grade level, those are those exciting opportunities we're talking about. If you have a 9th through 12th grade student, things like early college high or the new Vanguard Academy would be some of those opportunities. If you have a middle school student, participating in band for the first time or in a sports team for the first time are some of those opportunities. And when you're in 5th grade going into 6th grade, being able to choose those, I think, is important. And we really want them to be excited about whatever those classes are, because we know students that are excited to come to school, even if it's just to go to PE class. They're excited to wake up in the morning just for that. They're more likely to be successful in school. So that's why Broken Arrow provides such a wide range of opportunities. That's why Broken Arrow puts such a great emphasis on the arts. And that's why we have those there for you. So make sure that you check out those opportunities. And when you're selecting those electives, you really talk to your student about it. We really want them to be as engaged as possible. When we talk about pre-enrollment, I will also say this. There are 2 parts to pre-enrollment. First is choosing your classes, and that's what we're doing right now. Second will be whether or not you're virtual next year, and that process will take place in March and April. So just pick the classes that your student is excited about and wants. And then when it comes time to determine whether or not your student is interested in virtual next year or in-person learning, we'll cross that bridge a little farther down.
All right, Caleb, our next question is, when considering BAVA for next school year, will there be opportunities for elementary kids to interact in person?
I think I need a little more clarity on that question. If we're talking about special activities like a field day or maybe something that takes place at a specific elementary school. That all depends on the state of our health emergency that we're currently in. We want you to be as connected to the schools as possible. And so we're hoping to provide those opportunities on a larger scale once the pandemic lets up and once these kind of lockdown measures that we have in place are lifted. So that's the goal. We absolutely want to have more opportunities for there to be social emotional connections and more, just frankly, opportunities for kids to be kids and have fun. And so that's the goal. And we're looking forward to planning those. The administrators, we talk at least once a week on a Zoom call, and they have some really cool, exciting ideas that they want to implement for virtual students. And we're really excited about planning those. But I guess the best thing I can say at this point is we really, really want to, and those are to be determined. So we're very hopeful.
I think, Caleb, in our reentry plan for the district, I think there are some guidelines in there, isn't there? I think for the virtual students and when they could possibly start doing some more things.
Yeah,
I could be
absolutely. Absolutely. And that reentry plan is still available at baschools.com. And I think it's one of the 5 scrolling main pages that you see there.
Okay, our next question is, why is there different numbers of days in each class? Understand the difference for PE and art, etc. But my daughter is supposed to be on day 105 out of 168 in a couple classes and 102 out of 164 in another class. Is that specific to us or is that normal? Also, it seems like the days continue to count on breaks. So it's constantly saying that we are behind.
Yeah, that's a great question. The pacing guides were put forth by the software company. And when we recognized that there were some discrepancies, which you're talking about, we did put out a newsletter in December, or earlier, maybe even, that highlighted percentages that your student should be at. And what we did is we took all of those lessons and we started with our end date of May 26th and backed up and said, here's the percentages you should be at because those days are different. And that's one of the questions that we get asked quite a bit. So because the software company took one approach that didn't really work for the Broken Arrow calendar, we made that pacing calendar available, which is still available on our website. In addition to that, we will resubmit that newsletter next month and just kind of say, hey, here's where your kid should be at. Now, there's 2 things that I want to talk about in addition to that. It does get a little confusing when you're talking about days versus percentages, right? And so what I want you to do is take a look at that pacing guide. If you don't already have it, we'll put it out again and see if it makes sense. If it doesn't make sense, reach back out to us. The other thing I want you to understand is the pacing guides are different for Edmentum Calvert Learning than they are for Edgenuity and they are for courseware. The latter 2 programs are semester-based programs, so they reset each semester. Calvert Learning did not do that because it's more elementary oriented, and so it was a year-long program. So you'll really need to take a close look at which one your student is in and make sure that you understand that information. And again, if that's still confusing, which I understand it's very easy for it to be confusing, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. We're more than happy to explain it to you.
So the next question, I guess, kind of comment is just going back to that first question about it looks like students may be behind and they're just wanting to make sure that it's correct. I would just advise them, if you have any questions about whether or not your pacing is correct, for you to go ahead and reach out to your roster teacher. They would be the ones to best know, how long your student's been in the program and how far they need to be at this point. And they are also the ones who can help to kind of alter that. I mean, we can do it too as administrators, but they are really the ones working with the curriculum the most and are just absolutely experts in that area. So they would be able to best assist you with that. But please reach out to any admin or your roster teacher about that pacing as far as coming, if you think it may not be correct. Does that sound right, Caleb?
Yeah, absolutely. And I would just make a couple more comments about pacing. Number one, when you're in a brick and mortar school and your kid turns in an assignment late, there can be penalties assessed by a teacher. We don't do that in Virtual Academy because we know we want to provide flexibility. That means the schedule for your family may look different than the schedule for another family. So we don't want you to get behind. We know it's dangerous if you fall very far behind, but also don't let your student panic if they get a day behind. We still have several days of several weeks of school. So if they get 2 or 3 days behind, on that fourth day, you don't need to make them do 5 days worth of work and get caught up all in one day. That'll cause some frustration and anxiety on your students' part. Second thing I want you to understand is that in education, it's not just a linear progression. We do what we call a spiraling curriculum, meaning each year we talk about nearly the same topics, we just talk about them in more depth. So maybe your student doesn't do quite as well in, let's say, English in second grade or even 10th grade as you would have hoped. You're going to revisit those concepts in more depth the next year. And so that gives them the ability to continually be on the rise in that educational process. So just keep those things in mind. Pacing's new for parents if they're not an educator, right? That's your teacher's job in brick and mortar, and they take care of that and you never worry about it. But once you see that your kid's behind, rightfully, it provides some anxiety for you, anxiety for your students. So for your students' sake, just handle that as calmly as possible and recognize we want your student to succeed, and we'll do everything we can to help.
Okay, so our next thing it's more of a comment. It's that they would like to see some more videos of teaching from their roster teachers. It sounds like because sometimes they said it's a very lonely life. I am assuming that being at home, doing virtual school can be very lonely. I do think some of our teachers are putting out some videos, but maybe Caleb, you can expand on that.
So there's a few things I'll say to that. One, we do want to provide what we would just call a social emotional check-in. And that's just, we hope you should see every one of your elementary and middle school teachers specifically providing opportunities just for your students to get together and interact with really no academics involved. We certainly don't mind talking and having the discussion about putting out some academic videos, but that becomes a dangerous downhill slide in that someone might say, well, that video was great, but it'd be even better if you did a video about this, and it'd be even better if you did a video about this. And so really what you would get into is needing a specific video for every single kid, for every single class, in order for them to be the most effective. And that can then become extremely time consuming. So it is something that we're processing and trying to work through the best way possible to do that. We will certainly write this down, and as an admin team, we'll talk about ways that we can increase the amount of interaction that you have with an actual roster teacher.
All right, the next question is asking that they have a high school student. I'm so sorry, it scrolled on me. Is there, okay, for high school students who plan to continue with BAVA, will there be more elective options for high school students available, or the ability to submit other activities for electives to allow more flexibility?
That's kind of a difficult question to answer, but I'll do my best. When we talk about the second part of that question, can we use activities? There are state regulations that say we have to meet certain criteria in order for things to be done for high school credit. So we can't just really open it up to any activity can be considered a class for high school credit. The first part of that question, are there going to be more electives? We're consistently looking at various options to improve. One of the things that we have to consider for next year is which software programs will be the best to be used. And that will determine the majority of our electives. And so each year we look at that software program, we talk to the different software companies and say, what electives do you offer? What do they look like? How interactive are they? And that is always one of the major factors in determining which software programs we go with. So we hope to offer more, but again, that's a decision that we have to weigh. Um, Academic factors like, do these courses meet the needs of our students in order to graduate? Are these courses and is this software program something that is usable and user-friendly and helps kids navigate the software easily? And then of course, electives as well. So we want to offer as many electives as possible, but if the software we use to offer more electives becomes more confusing and cumbersome, it kind of defeats the purpose. So all of those things kind of tie together as we make those decisions.
Okay. Then we have a couple comments just about, encouraging BAVA to next year have, or even this year, have more of that synchronous learning. They're interested in more interaction, possibly activities in small virtual groups for kids. I know a lot of elementary students. I can't speak to the middle school teachers or high school teachers because I'm not working with them. I do know that at the elementary level, all of our teachers are offering like social Zooms and all our Google Meets or small group activity type things like that. So I'm not sure if these are parents of students who are older or but if you are an elementary student and parent, I would encourage you to reach out to your roster teacher once again, because they said that they love their roster teacher. So it sounds like they have good communication with them. I would just encourage them to reach out to their roster teacher and ask, when are those social Zooms or, social emotional development Zooms, and when can, they get into a small group type thing.
May I interject? They have live interaction sessions. A lot of them just do something fun like a scavenger hunt, or I know that some of them are trying to have a makeup Valentine party this week. Some of them just eat lunch with their class. So I do know that all of our elementary teachers are doing that. If you're unaware when your child's activity is occurring, just reach out to your roster teacher and find out when that is. I know they share that in emails, but I know that there are a lot of emails to read. And also going back to the concern about second semester joining with the pacing, just reach out to your roster teacher. If it's something they already covered first semester, then they're going to work with you on skipping that particular lesson so you can feel like you're getting to the curriculum you need.
Ms. Howard, that's one of those questions or comments that you're making that if it's specific to your student, just email me tomorrow or tonight, and I'll be happy to talk to your roster teacher and see what's going on there. Anybody else have any questions? Okay, one thing I know about meetings of this kind is that we will eventually hang up here in a few minutes, and then as soon as we end the meeting, someone will go, oh, I should have asked. So before we go, I'm just going to have all of us administrators type our email chat box really quickly. And so you can have all of those. And we'll hang on here for a few minutes just to see if anybody else has questions. So Michael's asking about synchronous learning, and that's a great question. And again, that goes into which lessons would we do? And we've consulted with other districts and seen where if we do a lesson in math, there's some frustration on some people's part because that lesson didn't talk about the math where they were at. So your kid may be on lesson 5 and another kid may be on lesson 8, and the teacher gives a synchronous lesson on lesson 6, and it doesn't help anybody. And so that's one of the reasons we utilize the software program mostly, is to allow that flexibility of pacing and to allow families that may work during the day to do school in the evening or weekends. So we have heard from other districts that when they try to do that in in association with the software programs, it ends up frustrating people just as much as it ends up helping people. And that's why we decided to go with the social emotional check-ins versus just doing a lesson, because that lesson could help a whole bunch of people, but it also could very well not be of help to anybody, just based on the fact that we allow people to pace themselves out. So something we'll continue to work on. It's something that we'll talk to the team about later this week when we meet again, and see if there's not a way that we can come up with that. So Michael, I appreciate the comment, and we will continue to do everything we can to improve, and we will definitely take that feedback and talk about it as well. Did want to remind everyone before we go, our website is full of good information. There's Parent University there that has a lot of Loom videos that teachers and I have and administrators have created to help you navigate certain things. It has links to different pacing guides and learning guides within the different software programs, getting started guides that maybe you want to review to help your students out. And again, I think I speak for all the administrators when I say, please, please, please reach out to us. We like kids. We love kids, and we want to help them be as successful as possible. And we know you have frustrations from time to time. And if you're experiencing that, hey, we want to help. So don't ever hesitate to reach out to us. Check in here one last time. You are welcome for our time. We will do probably at least one more of these later in the semester. If you don't get my newsletters, they're always available on the website, and that's my main way of communicating. We try to keep communication simple so you always know where to find things. So that website always has all the information you need. And if any of it's confusing or hard to find, again, just give us a shout and we will be there. Okay?
Caleb,
Go ahead.
we had somebody sneak in a question just now. What if they didn't receive the enrollment email?
You should have received that. You should receive that this week if your student is a 5th grader. If they're a 6th through 11th grader, you should already be receiving that. And I mentioned this a couple times in my different newsletters, but the 5th graders, as the counselors go to each elementary school, they're contacting the roster teacher and saying, here's the information to send out. So if you don't see that by Tuesday or Wednesday, reach out to your roster teacher. If they don't have the information, they'll reach out to me. You can reach out to me. I'll reach out to that middle school and make sure you get that sooner rather than later. Good question. Okay, I think that's it. Thank you again, everyone, for attending, and you guys go enjoy the rest of your evening.
Bye.